So you have so many domains which will be disrupted by this technology. And the adoption will start slowly, but it will grow exponentially. And really, where we headed for smart contracts is for them to be the leading form of digital agreements. That's for sure.
Welcome to Hedera Hashgraph's Gossip About Gossip. I'm Daniel Francis.
I'm Ken Anderson.
And I'm Paul Madsen.
If you are a developer, an entrepreneur, crypto enthusiast, or just trying to learn more about how distributed ledger technology and Hedera Hashgraph will impact your industry, then you'll love the episodes that we have coming up. Bookmark us, add us to your podcast app, and stay tuned.
Hey there, and welcome to Hedera Hashgraph, Gossip About Gossip. I'm your host, Paul Madsen. Today I'm joined by Gary Kunz, my Hedera colleague. Hey, Garrick, how's it going?
Hey, Paul, it's great to be here.
I had your brother on a couple of weeks ago. It's actually a personal goal of mine to have your whole family on.
I'll be excited to hear what my mom knows about cryptocurrency at this point.
Well, the outsider's perspective is always interesting. Joining us today, a special guest. If you've been following the news, you've seen Chainlink is on a roll. Lots of announcements demonstrating some great successes. So we're excited to have joining us today Johann Eid. Johann is a product manager and developer evangelist at Chainlink. Welcome, Johann. How are you?
Hey guys, yeah, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Thanks for chatting with us today. So yeah, as I said, Chainlink on a roll, doing some great stuff. We some time ago announced an integration between Chainlink and Hedera, so it's great to be able to talk to you today about some of those announcements. First question, what's an oracle? Sort of set the stage for us if you could.
Yeah, so that's a key question. An oracle is a piece of middleware which allows you to feed external data into your smart contracts. So currently, as you probably know, smart contracts have no access to real-world data. On-chain, they only have access to blockchain information, right? Which there isn't a lot of it, so it's not very interesting what you can do there. With Oracle, you are able to access market data, trade finance data, IoT data, to leverage basically all the use cases that are from the real world into the blockchain.
I was watching a recent presentation of yours, I think from an Ethereum meetup. You asserted that 80% of smart contracts need external data, but without an oracle, they're in their own little silo and they can't access it.
Yeah, definitely. So currently, and it's our true belief at Chainlink, most of the use cases which really have real value in the real world need off-chain data in order to be utilized by blockchain, so into smart contracts. So currently, we are very limited in our use cases. The only information you can leverage is the information that's available on the blockchain. And that's really not a lot of info. So if you want to get the interesting information, the information that has value, that can allow you to create compelling applications, compelling dApps that can really have an effect on today's societies, then you need to access these key API endpoints, which will feed you the data that you need.
Yeah, and in the absence of that external data, we're stuck with CryptoKitties and the like.
Exactly, which CryptoKitties is really great, but it's about as far as we can go, I think.
Right.
And so for taking us into that next kind of era of smart contracts where we can access external data, we often talk about garbage in, garbage out. How do we solve for that with oracles?
Yeah, definitely. That's a great question. So first thing to say with oracles is that they're a third party, right? So oracles are not part of the consensus mechanisms. So it's not very hard to currently create an oracle which will fetch data from an API endpoint, let's say from CryptoCompare or CoinMarketCap, and feed it directly onto the blockchain, right? However, you have to trust this third party. You have to say, okay, so this third party just fed me data, which could potentially trigger $100 million smart contracts. I have to trust him. Now, everything I said here is completely opposite to the crypto motto, to the crypto ethos, which is don't trust, but always kind of verify, right? And have consensus mechanisms, have processes in place to make sure that the data you're being fed and that the smart contracts that you're creating are as secure as possible. Because these smart contracts will self-execute and are deterministic. So once it's done, you cannot go back. So you need the data that you're feeding into a smart contract to be as reliable as possible. So in order to do this, what Chainlink has set to create is a decentralized Oracle network, where basically we use multiple node operators, we use multiple oracles, which will each feed his own data and will aggregate this data through a consensus. So it's very similar to what we have currently in consensus mechanisms with Ethereum, with Bitcoin, where every node has its own state of the blockchain. And basically, we have all the states of the blockchain, and people come into consensus to what the true state is by combining all the states, right? Everyone has his own version, and then we come to consensus. Well, it's the same with what Chainlink is creating, this decentralized Oracle network. Everyone has its own version of the data they're feeding, and we come to consensus between all these participants.
It's actually very similar to how the Hashgraph consensus algorithm works, right? Everybody has a different sense of when a particular transaction happened, and we take the median, and in so doing, sort of amortize across all opinions, all values, and get a value that is fair and reasonable. And I guess you do the same for coin prices or whatever external data you might be trying to feed into a contract.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point. It's very similar to Hedera. Like, I think the way we approach it and everyone approach it, as kind of that we have this security mechanism that is a consensus on the blockchain, and we want the data that's being fed to smart contracts and to blockchains to be as secure as the smart contract itself, right? So what do we do to ensure that? Well, we use the same process that we use to secure the smart contract. So we secure smart contracts through decentralization, through having multiple nodes which are spread around the world, which are feeding, their own state of the network. Well, here it's the exact same thing. We did the same thing for data.
And for the nodes themselves, these Chainlink nodes, is it a permissionless model? Can anyone contribute to this?
Yeah, very good question. So it will always be a permissionless network. Anyone can can set up his own node and can start filling requests from smart contract creators. Currently, we are listing these nodes on our webpage. So we are having a whitelisting process at the moment where in order to list these nodes. However, no one is preventing you from just setting up your own node and starting to fulfill a request from people who request data from you. So it's a completely permissionless system, just as a blockchain and was intended to be, basically.
Chainlink has a token. Does the token play a role to some extent of weighting the opinions of those different nodes or different oracles? How do you use your token?
Yeah, the token is very key in our architecture. The system we are creating here is a fully decentralized system, right? And in order to have a fully decentralized system, which acts in a good manner, I would say, we need to have the right game theory and incentive mechanisms in place. The token will be used for staking in the future, where node operator will deposit an amount of link tokens into a smart contract. And whenever they send a request, which would be too different from the other requests that were received by the other node operators, then his link tokens will get slashed. So it will be used as a security deposit, and it will also be used as payment. So it's basically going to regulate the whole economics of our system.
Right. A disincentive for some oracle or node being different than the rest.
Exactly, yeah. We want to make sure that these nodes are not malicious. So we assume most nodes are honest, and the ones which are feeding data which is too different are probably malicious. So if they start being malicious, they'll get slashed.
We just seem to have a good overview of the network and the node operations. I'd be curious about the developer experience on the other side. Presumably they're, coding Solidity and adding Chainlink somewhere in there?
Yeah, exactly. So the good thing with Chainlink is that we are a team of with a big engineering background, so we know how difficult it can be to use a new framework or a new DApp, like a new system into your existing smart contract framework, right? So we made it as easy as possible for developers to use Chainlink. So we created this framework with very explicit functions. For instance, set Chainlink token, set Oracle address, create a request, so very explicit function, which allow smart contract developers to create a request where basically they will list the data they want to be provided to their smart contract, the API endpoint from where to fetch this data. So all the information that the node will have to gather in order to get the data. Once this request has been created, it's sent to an Oracle contract, And here the request also is very simple. You just send Chainlink request, and then the Oracle contract will send a transaction back with the data that was required from the smart contract creator. So it's a very, very easy process, I would say. Having been through a lot of documentations and other projects, I would say that we made it as easy as possible for developers to easily adopt Chainlink into their current development.
Johann, Chainlink has asserted a desire or a plan to be chain agnostic, right? So you started on Ethereum, but integrating with Hedera. Does the Oracle manifest differently on different platforms, or is it the same high-level process?
Yeah, it will be the same mechanisms. The idea there is that we don't know where the industry is going, right? And we are seeing all these great chains such as Hedera being spun up, and we want to support as much as we can, from them. So the way we do it is that we duplicate our existing code onto the other blockchain, and then we start, using it like we would be using it on Ethereum. On Hedera, it will be very similar to the way it's being used on Ethereum, since Hedera leverages Solidity. So it will be very straightforward for developers to build on Hedera, the same way they are using on Ethereum. The idea there is to really have standards across the industry. We don't want implementations to vary drastically, whether you're building from Hedera or from Ethereum. We want the same developer experience everywhere. It's hard enough to be a developer on a blockchain. We don't want to make it too hard, right? So the easier it can be, the better.
Right. And of course, the Oracle infrastructure of sourcing the data remains the same. You can repurpose that for different chains.
Exactly.
So as a developer, how do I know which oracles are available to me, which APIs and data I have access to?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. So that's actually something very exciting. Like the ecosystem we are creating, we don't want to have any control over it, right? So we want third parties to start creating reputation systems, listing services, all of this stuff. So that will happen in the future. Currently, the way for a developer to access this data is still on our documentation, where you have all the reviewed nodes. I say reviewed because we talked to these guys, they have great reputations, they were validating on networks like Cosmos and Tezos, so they know how to run nodes, which in the end, being a node operator is very similar to being a validator on other networks. And you'll be able to find on our documentation links to these node operators which are currently on Chainlink. I think we have 7 to 8 which have been reviewed to this day. This number is going to increase. And currently, you can only find them on our website. However, there is a third-party marketplace, which is being built by a service called Linkpool, which have been very long-time supporters of our network and are doing an awesome job. And that will be the first third-party service, which basically starts listing all these node operator and the APIs that they can provide.
You mentioned IoT earlier, and the premise that you could have a device oracle, I guess, feeding into a smart contract. I've seen you elsewhere refer to a Tesla car accident scenario where the details of the car's speed at the moment of the accident could be fed into an insurance smart contract or something like that. But that, by definition, there's a single source of data. How do you ensure that that data is trusted when you can't average over multiple sources of data?
Yeah, definitely. So averaging for multiple sources of data is good in order to see if, like you have multiple data providers, you want to average it to have the best data possible. Now, when you have a single source of data, it still makes sense to have multiple operators. First, because if you have only one operator feeding you this data, this operator for some reason could get DDoSed or could have his node go down. You don't want this to happen whenever you have a smart contract which relies on IoT data. Let's say there are millions of dollars. You don't want one node to go down and your contract goes to nothing because the guy was offline. And the other reason is that the actor could be malicious. Let's say you have only one node feeding data from one single data source. That gets risky. It's a thing that the data source could be compromised. Nothing we can do there. However, if also the node operator could be malicious, then it gets into a very tricky scenario. I would much rather have one single data source and 10 node operators which are feeding me data, and I can be sure that these 10 node operators will have a good uptime and won't be malicious. Or if they are malicious, it would take 6 or 7 of them in order to really impact.
Google recently announced adding support for Chainlink against their BigQuery service. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, definitely. So we are currently working with Google in order to get BigQuery's data onto blockchain. We truly believe that data providers such as Google will have a big benefit in the new kind of economy that's being formed in the blockchain ecosystem, where they will be able to provide their data to smart contract creators in order for all this data to be leveraged in insurance, in trade finance, all of these sectors which will be on blockchain. So Google, through this move of working with us, is first clearly showing that at least they seem to believe that you're on the right track, as far as our technology goes. And also they see the potential that blockchain technology has in the future in order to monetize data.
That's exciting. And it seems like there's partnerships with Oracle as well. And as kind of the front lines as an evangelist, I'd be curious, what are your thoughts on kind of the hurdles to expanding that adoption of smart contracts in Oracles?
Yeah, so we're currently working with Oracle, and I think the main hurdles, in order to really get to mainstream, it's the problem that we are solving. I would really say this. It's getting real world data onto blockchain is one of the main hurdles, not the only one, but it's one of the main hurdles, which has slowed down drastically the adoption of blockchain technology. I think as we progress in time and as we start working with more and more enterprises, more and more projects, more and more companies, then smart contract creators will be incentivized to work with Chainlink, and also mainstream enterprises, leading enterprises will start using this technology. Currently, it seems a bit scary. It's still, unexplored for big businesses. So they see the benefits of smart contracts. They see that they could automatize so many processes. They see that they could save money on so many third parties that they're currently using. Like they see all these benefits, but we are starting to have the big players who are taking a foot into this world. And as we get more and more, then enterprises and other businesses will start to migrate onto blockchain and onto smart contracts. And they'll be using Chainlink in order to get their data there.
Seems like it could be a sort of a virtuous cycle where the more external data is available to smart contracts, the more viable is a smart contract for some enterprise use case. And the more adoption of smart contracts, the greater the demand for those external data sources via oracles.
Yeah, exactly. The way we see it is really that there is going to be an exponential growth in smart contract adoption until smart contracts become the leading form of digital agreements and replace the digital agreements that you have today. The benefits to using smart contracts are too big to ignore for these big players. In insurance, it's really crazy, like the amount of dollars they are paying to check the information, to settle all the accounts. They lose money, they lose time, they lose resources. All of this could be solved with smart contracts. And you have insurance, you have trade finance, you have finance itself. So you have so many domains which will be disrupted by this technology. And the adoption will start slowly, but it will grow exponentially. And really, where we headed for smart contracts is for them to be the leading form of digital agreements. That's for sure.
So what's next for Chainlink?
So that's a great question, because it's very hard to say what's next exactly, since so much stuff is going on at once. We keep building, we keep improving the protocol, we keep adding more people to our ecosystem. Hedera was a very recent one, which we are super proud of. And I would say that really we are going to keep growing the ecosystem, decentralizing even more. We are going to see it grow from where we are right now, where we have a few node operators with only one listing service, which is ourselves, to a true ecosystem where you have multiple marketplaces, where you have hundreds of node operators, where you have smart contracts fetching data from them, and the way it will grow is by us working with more and more companies, with by us onboarding more node operators, and also getting more security into our system. We've been looking at the trusted execution environments recently. For those of your podcast that don't know, trusted execution environments are basically pieces of hardware that allow to run code in something we call an enclave. And this enclave has confidentiality and integrity proofs where basically no one can access the content of this code, even the node operator, and no one can tamper with it. So we could have an even more secure data feed with the tamper proof guarantees. And we could also start having Oracle nodes manage credential, private keys, all this very confidential and very sensible stuff could be managed by node operators in order, for instance, to sign transactions on other blockchains or make a bank payment using bank credentials. So there is a lot going on basically, and we are looking at more and more use cases to take this technology to where it should be.
That's great, Johann. We'll be staying tuned for that. If someone wants to get involved with Chainlink, what are your recommendations there?
We have a very active community. I think we've gotten very lucky actually, because we have one of the most supportive and passionate community in the space. And I really recommend people to start joining it. If not for Chainlink, only to learn the possibilities that smart contracts and blockchain technology offers. You can find the community on Discord, on Telegram. We have a Gitter also to ask questions for smart contract creators.
That's great. I spent a little bit of time actually in the Telegram Discord when we announced our partnership. It was a friendly community, which is hard to find at times on Telegram.
Yeah. I think honestly that our community is very tech driven and is a very friendly community, open, and they see all the potential from the technology, and they're very excited about it.
Johann, this has been great. Thank you very much. You indicated that Chainlink is proud and excited about the partnership. We are as well from the other side. So thanks for chatting today.
Definitely, for sure.
Thank you for listening to Hedera Hashgraph's Gossip About Gossip. If you liked the episode, please subscribe, rate and review, and also share and tell your friends.
Or connect with us on social media like Twitter, Instagram, etc. at Hashgraph, particularly if you want to leave us feedback on the podcast. We look forward to hearing from you.